Okay. Well, the stream has actually been pretty smooth the past few times, and suddenly it's not. I wonder why. It was downloading, like Steam decided to download something. I canceled that, but I don't know. Not canceled, but paused it. Okay, there we go. Looks like we're doing a bit better. A little bit better stream health now. Alright. Well, let's get started. Alright. The pillar rooms. Actually, I'm gonna pause this and see if stream settings. Okay, it's on low latency. Oh, whatever. All right. I don't think I really have anything to talk about today. I just wanted to click buttons. Like, nobody watches this anyway, so might as well just talk to myself in my free time. Focus on clicking the buttons today. It's really annoying that like YouTube's like the page to keep track of the chat and analytics and stuff just doesn't know how to deal with a vertical monitor. Like most of the analytics are hid behind the chat. can see concurrent viewers 0, chat rate 0, views 0, and no activity in the chat. So I guess that's the important thing that I need to see. They call me 00 Kevin. Zero viewers, 0 subscribers, and my name is Kevin. Something I was thinking about today. Or that I've thought about in general with like game design is that with skill-based games, especially, well, not especially, but like with skill-based games, which I'm specifying because there are games that aren't skill-based. Like skill-based games are, as in games that are designed to challenge the player in some way. As opposed to, there are games that are more about the narrative or the experience. Like this is a skill-based game. This is still don't really know what this is. I don't know what I'm making here, but it's something. But it's not a skill-based game, but with skill-based games, there is this kind of almost inevitability where at some point the skills that the game is supposed to be testing, because like every skill-based game is testing some specific some skills, whether it's like you're in a shooter, how good you are at shooting, in a platformer, how good you are at jumping, how or controlling a character who is jumping. Or like, it's not always a mechanical dexterity skill. Sometimes it's in a strategy game, it's often how good you are at thinking and strategizing. But at some point, it's almost inevitable that those strategies will kind of take a back seat to just knowledge checks. I mean, those skills will just take a back seat to knowledge checks. Not in all games. There are a couple of exceptions I can think of, but like here's a big example is like a shooter. The skill that the game, I guess the main skill that the game wants to test is like being able to aim and hit a target. But on top of that, it's kind of testing how you can do that in a combat situation. Can you continue aiming and hitting a target when the target is shooting back at you? And then can you look at the situation and come up with a strategy? Can you, okay, these are the enemies I'm fighting, these are the types of enemies I'm fighting, this is where they're coming from, here's what the map looks like, here's what weapons I have, here's the resources I have to use right now. and then come up with a strategy, and then execute the strategy, and then when things change, change your strategy on the fly. Be like, okay, there's a new enemy, I need to adjust what I was going to do to be able to win this fight. Or like, oh, I didn't perfectly execute that strategy, so now I need to change something about it. But like, that is, like, I would say what is the most fun thing about a shooter is like not just the pointing and clicking, but the, you know, how that applies in an actual battle. But the thing is, like, once you've played a shooter a couple of times, the knowledge becomes more important. It becomes more helpful than your skill. Your knowledge, and by knowledge I mean like, oh, I know there's an enemy over there. I know which enemies are in the next room. I know, I know what's coming, so I don't, like, I don't really have to react. I kind of can have a perfect plan ahead of time. And like the ultimate version of that is just like, I know where all the enemies are, so I can just like take them all out before this even escalates into a proper battle. And like a you know, key example of this that happened with me was I played through one of the Halo games on Legendary with a friend once, many years ago. And I just thought it removed all of the fun out of the game, because it wasn't a game about engaging with the combat system of Halo. It was a game about, like, okay, let's go into this room. Oh, and we died. Okay, we died because there was a guy over there. Okay, so now we know there's a guy over there, so when we go into this room, we need to shoot him. Okay, cool, we shot him. Oh, okay, now we died. Again, okay, because there was a guy over there. Okay, so we gotta go in, shoot the guy to the left, shoot the guy to the right, and then die. And then, like, it was just this kind of incremental, like, every time we would die, we would kind of make a little bit more progress. And, you know, that's not necessarily an inherently bad game design. Like, Hotline Miami was basically built around that concept, but it does feel like not what that game is supposed to be making you feel, not the skill that that game is supposed to be testing. Like, Halo is supposed to be about engaging with the combat sandbox and coming out victorious. Like, the ideal battle in Halo is one where you kind of squeak by with, like, oh wow, I wasn't sure if we were gonna win that one. But yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was watching like some gameplay videos of like Resident Evil Mercenaries, and like, oh, here's the world record in Mercenaries. It's like, oh, they got so many points. But then you watch the run, and it's like it's not very fun to watch, because they just memorize exactly what the best thing to do is and then execute it. Whereas I mean, I would say what is interesting about Resident Evil's combat, and especially like RE4 Remake that really doubled down on this, is this like the John Wick aspect of it, where you are outnumbered and you have to use your wits to take out a bunch of enemies who just kind of, like, I don't know, they outnumber you. And then, like, high score mercenaries running that game, though, just feels very mechanical, and it doesn't really have that aspect to it. It's like they just kind of figured out what the best gun is to use. They figured out, you know, when the dangerous enemies are going to spawn, and, like, have the exact strategy to deal with that. And I do think, you know, memorization is inevitable in any sort of, like, skill, because you will just get better at kind of knowing what to do in certain situations. Like, oh, I've been in a situation like this before. I remember what the best way to get out of this is. And also, you know, just kind of remembering, like, what the best, like, what tool is best for what, or whatever. But I think it's not great that, like, knowledge checks and just memorization kind of becomes the key factor in so many skill-based games. But I'm not sure what to do about it, because it's like, I don't know, inevitably people are going to learn the game, and that's going to give them an advantage over people who didn't learn the game. Which also brings me to multiplayer. Because multiplayer is like a big way to kind of get around this. You know, if you're fighting the AI, they're predictable, but if you're fighting another person, they are less predictable. You have to adjust to what they're doing. But at the same time, it's like you look at any big competitive multiplayer game and you look at what they're doing at the top, and a lot of it is just knowing the meta. A lot of it is just being like, yes, I know what they're probably about to do. I know that they know what I'm probably about to do, so I know other options I can do that are less effective but less predictable, but they know those options too. And, you know, it's basically just knowing all the different ways the game can play out and sort of making decisions on, you know, you are still making decisions on the fly. So, like, I don't want to downplay, like, any high-level competitive players of any game is only memorizing stuff, but the memorizing stuff is such a huge part of it. Like, you know, if I'm playing, like, when I'm playing Marvel Rivals, I'm playing a completely different game than, like, actual competitive players, because they're playing the game, like, 10 steps ahead of me, because they're, by the way, this is a lie, because they're, you know, they have played so many games and watched other people play games and read into the meta to see, like, they just know everything that they need to know about the game so that they can make those plans. And, you know, fighting games too are like, again, it's not only a knowledge check, but it is like the knowledge check is a really big part of it. It is a much bigger part of it than it is at lower levels. Or like even chess, you know, a game that is supposed to be about strategy is kind of at very high levels. It's more about, oh, this person has just played a whole bunch of chess and read a bunch of games that grandmasters have played and just studied them so that like any game of chess you play, they have seen the outcome. You know, they've done Doctor Strange's 40,000,001 outcomes or whatever. And, you know, again, there is certainly, that is certainly not to dismiss, like what those chess grandmasters are able to do with that knowledge, but it is kind of acknowledging that the knowledge is a huge part of it. Yeah, so this is kind of a funny bit where I have like this room and it's going in one direction over there, and then you go into that room and it says nothing to see here, and then you find the other side and you just get like a mirror version of this room. It kind of loses its punch because the original intention with this room was that it was supposed to be very annoying, but I have since created far more annoying rooms, so this one is kind of a walk in the park compared to some of the ones I did last time. But like I was thinking about it, like the one game that isn't really a knowledge check at high levels is Tetris. Or the one game I can think of that isn't really a knowledge check at high levels. Because, like, I think a higher level Tetris player will learn to recognize patterns. But that's just kind of... that is the natural process of playing Tetris. Is that as you play, you get better at recognizing the patterns without even necessarily thinking about it. And any puzzle game, really. You go like, oh yeah, I see this shape on the board. That means this is a good place to put an L piece. This is a good place to put an S piece or a Z piece. But, you know, high-level Tetris players aren't necessarily going online and, like, studying, oh, what are the best setups for this or that. They're just kind of naturally getting better at it as they go. And getting better at thinking forward a few pieces. Like, a high-level Tetris player isn't playing a fundamentally different game from me. I feel like they're just doing it way better than me because their brain is faster. Another thing that a lot of games have tried to do to kind of freshen stuff up so you can't just memorize the game is randomization. This is where we get roguelikes and the like. Like roguelikes, but also like randomizers. like randomizer mods for existing games. Like those, they're very popular. Those are very popular things. But it's like I want to make sure like, okay, I'm not muted. So I didn't have. But yeah, the idea is like to randomize the experience so that you can't just memorize it. Oh, there's a guy around that corner, or oh, I'm going to get this weapon here, and I can use it there, and that like. Is definitely a step towards kind of addressing this issue, but at the same time, it's still not, doesn't completely address it, because it just kind of moves the knowledge down a step, I guess. Like, yes, you can't memorize where everything is in the game, but you can memorize like what are all the items you get in this game, right? And like what are the best builds you can make? Like if you watch people who are very good at roguelikes that have some sort of scoring system going for a high score, they're not just going in and winging it and being real good with whatever build they get. They're going in looking for a specific build, and they're kind of resetting until they get the right things to get that build. Like it is very much, I know what the most effective way to play this game is, and as again, like they are playing a fundamentally different game from you when you're playing through the game casually. Which I guess that's kind of the big thing, is like how do you make a skill-based game where the expert player isn't playing a fundamentally different game from the beginner player, where they're playing the same game, but the expert player is just better at it. It just has more experience. So I think, like, a lot of in a lot of competitive games, if you put a pro player up against a casual player, the casual player is obviously going to lose regardless of what kind of game it is. But I think there are games where there are a lot of games where the casual player just won't even understand why they lost. So I don't know, that's just kind of a game design thing. And it's also, not necessarily a black and white. I kind of prefer for the game to not change to a knowledge check when you reach a certain level of skill. Because, going back to fighting games, again, is I feel like it gets to that knowledge check level kind of surprisingly early, because I'm not remotely a competitive fighting game player. I'm at that very frustrating like middle ground where I'm too good to play casually with friends but not good to compete. So yeah, fighting games are frustrating for me. But the thing is, I usually find the hurdle I reach when I'm getting into a fighting game is like, okay, I can go through and like learn to play every character, learn like the frame data for every character, learn like, oh, this is a frame trap, this is a cross up, and just remember what to do in every possible situation in the game through practice and trial and error, and watching people who are better than me and watching back my own games that I lose and just be like, what did I do wrong here, and this and that and this and that. But it's not fun. That's also kind of a side note, like my issue with fighting game inputs. Like, I don't have problems doing a quarter circle or a shoryuken or whatever. As a pad player, I do have trouble with 360s. I can usually, I don't know, like, I can figure it out. But my issue with the inputs is that, like, every character has a unique set of inputs. Which on the one hand is neat because it provides, like, an expression for the character. Like, okay, we have charge characters and quarter circle characters and, like, grapple characters who usually do half circles, and that's just Street Fighter. Like, other games have different standards, and that's interesting. I've heard about, like, one character in Guilty Gear who has, like, half circles, and he has like every single possible half circle on the input does a different move that kind of reflects what the move does. And that's cool. But my problem is, like, you can't just... I can't just choose random on the character select screen and be able to play as a character. I have to, like, go into training mode for a bit as a character to be, like, remotely functional as that character. Because, like, I have to, learn what are their specials, what are their command. My brain is all buttoned up. The input, I like auto combos. The command inputs, no. Target combos, that's it. Yeah, like what are their specials? What are their target combos? What cancels into what? Like, to just be even functional with a character in a fighting game, you gotta memorize like a dozen things about that character. And that's fine if it's one character and I have, you know, my main, and even like a secondary. Maybe even a third character. But it's always kind of like, I feel like I have to put way too much, like, mental, just memorization effort if I want to get everything out of the game. Otherwise, I'm only playing, like, a fraction of the game. I am playing against other people, but it's, I don't know. So yeah, that is my thing on like fighting game inputs, because that's a huge like discourse thing, but I never see anyone bring that point up. It's always like, on the one side you have the casual players who just can't do the fireball and are complaining about it, and on the other side you have the pro players who are saying, hey, get good. And it's like I'm kind of in the middle, where it's like, I do like the command input, I mean the you know, the special inputs and stuff. I think they're fun to do. But I don't like the fact that I can't just like hit random character on the character select screen and be able to jump in and play. Because like I can do that in Smash, where it's like, oh, I haven't really played this character before. I kind of know what they do, but I can select them and kind of figure it out. And that's just, I'm not gonna say it's impossible to do in fighting games. Like, I have seen pro players pick up a fighting game they've never played before and choose a character that they've never played before, obviously because they haven't played the game before, and just like take a few seconds in the first round in the middle of the fight to kind of, okay, I'm gonna try this, oh that didn't work, I'm gonna try this, oh that didn't work, and just kind of be able to put together combos by the end of one match. So it's certainly not impossible, but for me, I feel like it, to be even vaguely competent as a character in a fighting game, I have to go into training mode for like at least an hour. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I've been in here. But yeah, I just, I guess on the whole point about skill checks versus knowledge checks, I'm not really sure what the solution is. I'm not really sure if there should be a solution. So I'm sure some people kind of are, you know, like that. It's like you can get better at a game by studying it. I don't know. But especially with single player games, I mean, I feel like it should lean more towards emphasizing, like high level play should emphasize the skill that the game kind of was made to test. But I just generally have always hated memorization as a skill. It's because my brain doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't pick stuff up the way other people's brains do. Like in school, I would always do well at like math and science, and basically the classes where I wasn't memorizing things. I was or wasn't mainly memorizing things, where I was learning the thought process, learning some rules, and then applying those rules. So it really annoyed me in math class. It was like elementary school or so. We were learning algebra, and I was having fun with algebra. It's like, this is fun. This is a bunch of rules that I can learn and then play around with them. And it's solving a puzzle. And they're kind of intuitive rules. They're not arbitrary rules. They're rules that I can reason out given enough information. So I do remember there were times on tests where I forgot how that works, and then I kind of had to work backwards and sort of figure out the thing on my own. And you can't do that when it's all about memorizing. So at some point the math classes, they started doing this math minute thing, where it was you had to do all of the multiplication tables in a minute, and I just botched that every single time. And it was we did it every day. And it impacted my grade. It pissed me off. It was this is math. It's not supposed to be about memorizing stuff. And they're nope, we're doing this memorizing thing. And it was just I don't know. I'm supposed to be good at math because it's teaching the things that I'm good at. But now you're suddenly asking for memorization and quick recall. And it's well, I'm not. I'm trying, but I'm not good at that. And yeah. And so the same thing in English, where it was when we're talking about grammatical rules, it's yeah, man, I got that down pat. And then when it was or spelling, I was always good at spelling because there's a logic behind it, even when they, some words defy the logic, but there's kind of a logic to the words that defy the logic in a weird way. I don't know. My brain works in funny ways. I see patterns. I mean, gosh, look at this game. It's I tell you I see patterns, you're probably oh, okay. I mean, I say you. Nobody's there. I'm not talking to anyone. But this game is definitely a monument to my vision of patterns. But yeah, English, spelling and grammar, those felt very logical to me. But then other memorization things. Just were very frustrating. History was always terrible at. I think science, when it moved from here's how the logic of things work to just memorize all the parts of a cell, like that was very frustrating because like you never know what you're getting in science, if it's going to be like a logic thing or if it's going to be a memorizing thing. Like jumping forward to college, chemistry pissed me off so much because that's just like all memorization. Because that's just all just like, just remember what this random string of letters is, and you have to memorize like, okay, what is the charge of this, and what is the composition, and is it like, I don't know. I hated chemistry. It's horrible. The horrible thing about chemistry is they kind of trick you into thinking it's going to be a logic thing, because they're like, this is how we like balance the charge of ions, and then, but like there's some math early on, and like there's math throughout, but like early on it is more focused on math, but then suddenly they're just like, nope, you got to memorize all of this stuff. You just got to shove it into your brain. Yes, you'll be able to look it up anytime you need to know about it, like in the real world, but you gotta shove it into your brain for this class, even though you're not majoring in chemistry. It's like, that just sucked. Though history is interesting because like that one depends how it's taught. Where there are teachers who just teach it like a very boring, here's a list of people and places and dates, just memorize them. And that is how I learned history for a very long time. But then I had one very good college professor who just taught it in a way that was interesting. Just taught it in a way that like, okay, these aren't just names on a piece of paper that you have to memorize. This is a story. Like, these were people. Like, oh, here was this guy's motivation. Here's what he was thinking. And here's like why he did this. And here were the consequences of him doing that. And like framing history in that way. That was the first history class I ever like got. That I enjoyed it because it was framed in a way that my autistic brain was like, oh no, this is a story. Like I can, it wasn't just a series of facts. It like kind of Trojan horsed its way into the part of my brain that is usually reserved for like video game release dates and Marvel characters. I did think calculus was funny because it was kind of like the first couple weeks were like Okay, so here's how you do calculus, and it was some memorization and some like very complex stuff. But like by that point, I'd gotten better at studying, and then after like we got through the first segment, the teacher was like, "Okay, now I'm gonna teach you some stuff so that you never have to do any of that ever again." And just kind of, yeah, here are some shortcuts you can use to do all that stuff much faster and much easier. There's another time like I learned about linear algebra. Like I had heard linear algebra, it was so hard. It's not just, it doesn't sound very hard. Algebra is not hard, and lines aren't hard. Like y equals mx plus b, boom, linear algebra. But that's not what linear algebra is. I mean, not. I guess kind of. Yeah, when I finally like learned about linear algebra, I was like, wait a minute. I have been making games for years, and that's just linear algebra. Just like this stuff I've been doing while making games with like the, you know, some of it is under the hood and the program does it for me, but like understanding the concepts of manipulating objects in space on coordinates. I wasn't really sure how long I wanted to stream tonight. I watched a couple of the Resident Evil movies. My current hyperfixation is Resident Evil, so I do this. I just get like a game comes out or something that I'm just really into, and that is like my brain just wraps around it for the next month or so. And like I am like everything I think about is going to come back to this. And I'm going to, you know, I love this game, so I'm going to go play other games in the series. I'm going to watch videos of other people playing this game and other games in the series, and just like man, there's like still the center part, huh? Yeah, so I've been very Resident Evil obsessed because of Resident Evil 9. So I watched some of the movies on streaming. I was able to watch the first Paul Anderson movie and the oh hey, yeah, I was just rambling about Resident Evil movies. Yeah, I watched the first Paul Anderson movie from 2001, and then the one that came out 2021 called Welcome to Raccoon City, which I had heard wasn't very good. I thought they were both fun. The 2001 one was very early 2000s. It's like nu metal and bullet time and stuff, but it was fun for what it was. Yeah, it's good. I mean, Resident Evil games usually have pretty good replay value. Like, they encourage you to play multiple times because you'll, like, unlock upgrades, and, like, there are different challenge runs you can do to unlock new stuff. So, like, just playing through once might take 11 hours. I think closer to like 15 hours, but then like I played through 2 more times and unlocked the infinite ammo rocket launcher, so I can just like steamroll through the game and blow stuff up. And that was pretty cathartic. I would say if 9 is like your first Resident Evil game, like if you haven't played the series before, there are other places I would recommend starting that are usually much cheaper and go on sale more often. I think the Resident Evil 2 remake, like my advice for like the fastest way through, not the fastest, but like the minimum that you need to experience of Resident Evil is to play the Resident Evil 2 remake and then the Resident Evil 4 remake, because those are the 2 best games in the series. And they also both star Leon, and they kind of give a taste for kind of the both types of gameplay you can expect from Resident Evil games. And they're usually much cheaper. Seven is also a good starting point. It is probably the scariest game in the series. I do think one problem with 7 is it's kind of disconnected from the rest of the series, which in one way is good because it's sort of it was sort of a soft reboot, but on the other side, it's like 7 and 8 kind of tell their own little side story, and it seems like with 9 they're getting back to the main story. But yeah, 7 is good. And also on sale, and also on the Switch too. Yeah, 7 is a good one to watch. Alright, you too. $45,000. Trying to decide if I want to like push through the 150,000 or call it after this room. Okay. Might do one more. I guess I was rambling about the Resident Evil movies. Yeah, the first one is I don't know, kind of a dumb... It's a dumb movie. Like... But it's fun. Like, it's dumb, and it doesn't really feel like Resident Evil. Because it's... I mean, it's like a prequel. It was originally intended to be a prequel. Before they kind of decided, actually, let's keep going and, like, go in a really weird direction that is completely disconnected from the games and the sequels. I don't know, but it's kind of... The laser hallway is iconic. But it kind of, like, loses a little bit of steam after the laser hallway. Because they kill off most of the cannon fodder with the laser hallway. I'm trying to think, like, I think... There's, like, the laser hallway, then they shut off the power, then there's the big outbreak. And then the movie just kind of gets, like, there's this weird thing where it'll just, like, open a scene with a character just wandering around in a room, and you're not really sure how they got in that room. Like, oh, in the last scene they were with another character. What happened to that other character? Did they just wander in other directions? And, you know, the whole point of this scene is to set up an action moment. And there's also, you know, parts that I think were supposed to be cool and badass, but just wound up being funny. But they also might have been, like, I'm not really sure if they were intended to be funny, but they were enjoyable anyway. Like, there's this whole bit with Alice and the dogs. Oh, there's a room there. Okay. Where Alice, like, goes into a room, she gets chased by a dog. She breaks into, not breaks, but she ducks into another room, another door to get away from the dog. Turns around, a zombie attacks her. She kills the zombie with her hands, like pushes it against the wall, and it like knocks it over. Notices it has a gun. Grabs the gun. The dog starts clawing at a window to get into the room, and then breaks the window and gets in, and she ducks out the door and is like, oh, phew, I got away. And then she turns around and there's like 5 more dogs. And then she just opens fire and kills all the dogs. And spends all of her ammo. And then she turns around again, and there's the first dog, like, jumping out the window at her. So she's out of ammo, and so she, like, does this ridiculous move where she, like, does a wall run in a corner of the room, and then jumps off, and then just roundhouse kicks the dog and kills it. It's, like, such a funny sequence of events, and I feel like some of those things were definitely supposed to be funny, and some of them were maybe not supposed to be funny, because roundhouse kicking a dog is very funny, but I think that was supposed to be a cool moment. I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't a great movie, but as, like, a cheesy early 2000s horror film, it was fun. And I remembered it being pretty decent, but I don't remember if I ever saw... I think I caught bits and pieces of it just, like, on the Sci-Fi Channel, so, like, the version I saw was censored a lot. Though, at the same time, like, I was surprised how not gory it was. Like, there was blood, but not as much as you would expect from an R-rated Resident Evil movie. That the, you know, laser hallway, the guy gets diced up into cubes and splatters to the ground. They don't actually show it. Like, the camera kind of pans away before he splatters to the ground. Like, the cubes fall apart. And, I don't know. I guess it was 2001, and they had, you know, had to rely on practical effects mostly, and the digital effects didn't look as good as they can look now. So, like, that's why we get, like, movies can be more gory now. Video games are more gory now. Maybe I've just been desensitized, and, like, that would have been, that was shocking and gory back then, but these days it isn't. And then Welcome to Raccoon City. Like, I heard that was bad. I actually really enjoyed it. Because I heard it was bad. Okay. From two directions. One, I heard, you know, critics really didn't like it. And you know what? Fair enough. I'm not going to say it was, like, a horror masterpiece or whatever. It wasn't even particularly scary. There were some parts that were silly, I think, that were supposed to be suspenseful, but just kind of made me laugh. Like, there was a whole part where Chris is like, he flicks the lighter and he sees a zombie, and then the flame goes out, and he flicks the lighter again, and oh, the zombie's a little bit closer, and the flame goes out, and then he flicks the lighter again, the zombie's a little bit closer, the flame goes out, and he flicks the lighter again, and the zombie's gone. And it's just like, I get what they're going for here, but I don't understand why the zombie didn't just attack him in the dark. I don't know. But it was, you know, like, I still enjoyed those moments, because they were at least, like, that moment was memorable. It was interesting. And also, you know, the fact that it was Chris. Where, you know, the Paul Anderson movies just didn't really have much to do with the the games at all, outside of occasionally sticking the name of a character from the game onto the name of a character, of a completely unrelated character in the movie. Like, Welcome to Raccoon City was all just like, yeah, we're going to adapt the whole Raccoon City saga or era or whatever you want to call it. We're going to do that all in one movie. And that is kind of probably the movie's biggest failing, is that, like, it doesn't, like, trying to do the police station and the mansion and just the outbreak in general in one movie. They had to cut a lot of stuff, and what did remain didn't really get the focus that it probably needed. And they also changed a good amount of stuff, which I think, you know, is where the complaints from Resident Evil fans comes from. Because, like, I get why the critics didn't like the movie. It is a cheesy horror movie that isn't really scary. But I'm surprised so many Resident Evil fans are mad at it, because it's just, like, packed full with fan service. And sort of, like, that's kind of... I enjoyed it in the same way that I enjoyed, like, the Mario movie. I think the Mario movie is probably an overall better movie, but they're both kind of similar in that, like, it's cool to see the thing from the video game on the big screen. And be like, ooh, I get that reference. Ooh, I get that reference. Like, there are Welcome to Raccoon City feels like it was made with care, with like respect for the games. Like, the people who made this movie knew the games and liked the games and wanted to do that on the big screen. And their goal with the first movie was to do the whole Raccoon City incident in one movie. And to do that, they had to make some changes. But they felt like changes that were done in service of doing the whole Raccoon City incident in one movie, and not just changes that were made willy-nilly with no regard for the source material. It's I would compare it to, for example, like Marvel, like the MCU movies often take liberties with the source material, but they are often done in for the purpose of being like, how can we make this character feel like the character from the comics in this different universe we've created in the movie, in the movies. Or like, or how can we do this story and make this story fit in the MCU, even though we don't have all the characters who were important to the story in the comics. Right? So that's what it feels like when the MCU makes changes. Usually. Sometimes they make questionable changes, like Taskmaster was a very questionable change. And sometimes they're just like, they make changes because it'll be more interesting in the movie. Like, Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy is a very different character from Drax in the comics, but I think like his backstory in the comics is so complicated, and his character is kind of just big strong guy, like big, honorable warrior, strong guy. That kind of turning him into something different that kind of worked in a more interesting way on the team in the movies. I think that was a fair decision. But yeah, like the changes that they made in Welcome to Raccoon City, though they strike me more as of the of that kind of change, as opposed to the changes that Paul Anderson made felt more like when that one Fantastic Four movie turned Galactus into a cloud, or when the X-Men movies made the X-Men wear black leather because they thought yellow spandex was stupid. Blue and was it blue spandex, yellow? I forgot what the line was. But yeah, like changes that they made, like there's no Rebecca, no Barry. The main four and Sherry all kind of get out together. There's also this whole plot about like Umbrella's poisoned the water supply, so the outbreak doesn't happen because the zombies get out and start biting people and turning people. It happens because it's been in the water supply the whole time, which is just literally the plot of The Walking Dead. But there's no Barry, there's no Rebecca. Like Wesker is a very different character. It seems like a lot of the characters are somewhat different from who they were in the games, and a lot of it seems like an effort to kind of simplify and like streamline their story. Like Wesker is a more sympathetic guy, and he hasn't like been working with Umbrella all along. He's just a guy who kind of takes a bribe. But they have like so many just very specific moments and like references just that made the movie fun to watch. There's a place where, and there's a part where Wesker's eating a sandwich, and Jill grabs a sandwich out of his hand and he says, "Hey, that's mine." She says, "Jill's sandwich." Now it's Jill's sandwich. Like, okay, that's stupid, but I see what you did there. That kind of almost worked. And then, like, immediately after this, there was a part where Claire picks the lock to Chris's house because she's, like, coming back into town. But she picks Chris's lock and, gets into his house. And he kind of wakes up and finds her there. And he's like, "How did you get in here?" And he's like, "Yeah, I picked a lock." Like, you can't pick the lock. That's a great lock. And I was like, oh, I was sitting there. I was so expecting them to drop a Master of Unlocking line, and I would put money that there was a Master of Unlocking line there in the script, and maybe they even filmed it, but someone at some point was like, we just did a Jill sandwich joke, we can't immediately do a Master of Unlocking joke. Like, they also had parts where it was like you remember that just amazing looking burger at the very beginning of Resident Evil 2? Like, they have a part that is just the trucker grabbing a burger. It's like, but now it's a real burger. They had the itchy tasty thing, but in a different context. They had Lisa Trevor, but like, she was not a completely different character, but she wasn't like a monster to be avoided. She was a character that is interacted with. And yeah, like they remix stuff, and they like change characters' backstories. They changed Leon a lot, and a lot of people that's one of the biggest complaints I've seen. Like, Chris is basically just Chris. Like, he did a good job at just being Chris Redfield. Wesker is kind of different in backstory and personality, but I can see how he would evolve into, a more game accurate Wesker in a future movie. Jill is, I think, pretty good. Like, she isn't directly accurate to the games, but she is kind of cocky. But she does get, like, I think the least amount of screen time of the main four. Like, it's mainly about the Redfield siblings. Like, they're the main characters, and Jill is there, and she is, I don't know. I do like what they did with her, actually, even though it's not strictly game accurate. I can see I do feel like a bit of kind of a cocky hotshot is fitting for Jill. And then Claire is quite different. She's not a college student coming back into town. She was, like, estranged years ago, and she's coming back into town because she's kind of on conspiracy theorist boards. But I do feel like she, I don't know, gets the parts. Weirdly, she kind of feels more like Revelations Jill. Or Revelations 2 Jill. I mean, not Jill. Revelations 2 Claire. But she is, like, the character they developed there. I can see her going on to do Code Veronica. And that's kind of another big part of this movie, is that they were definitely setting up sequels. Like, they wanted to do more. The reason they tried to do the whole Raccoon City thing in one movie is because they didn't want to spend 3 movies in Raccoon City when the series has gotten so much bigger than Raccoon City now. So they kind of here we go. Another line. So yeah, so it like there are several kind of very clear indicators that they were planning to do Code Veronica next. And after Code Veronica, they were probably doing, they probably wanted to do Resident Evil 4. And that kind of brings us to Leon, who's, like, I think the most changed from the games, because he's kind of a goofball. He's kind of the comic relief. He's kind of just like this guy who has no idea what he's doing. They really lean into the rookie thing, and he's just kind of stumbling throughout the entire movie. There's a point where where I think Chris, they meet up near the end of the movie and says, "Rookie, you're still alive?" And he goes like, "Yeah, I'm surprised too." It's like, it's funny, but it's not really Leon. But at the same time, it's like, who was Leon in Resident Evil 2? He was kind of just a good guy, a Boy Scout. He was likable, but he wasn't the Leon we know in Resident Evil 4. He wasn't the guy, like, when you say Leon S. Kennedy, you're not thinking rookie cop who survived a bad night. You're thinking the guy who roundhouse kicked zombies. And the guy in this movie is definitely not the guy who roundhouse kicks zombies. But it does feel like they were kind of building up the character. Because, like, spoilers, he's the one who gets the rocket launcher at the end. Like, he's the one who gets the big rocket launcher moment. So it's like, it kind of, I can definitely see where they were building up this character growth, so that when he comes back in RE4, and, like, he's like, okay, yeah, I went through this horrible night, I was not prepared, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that again. Like, I'm not going to be unprepared again. So, like, I have become much more skilled, and now I'm this hyper-competent badass Leon that we see in RE4. So that's kind of what I think they were going for, is like, okay, what if we get to see Leon grow from the comic relief to the coolest guy in the world, instead of just being like, a likable, but, like, he's a little bit bumbling in the games, Resident Evil 2, especially the original version, where you just, like, every time Ada's there, Ada, wait! And she just runs away, and he just, Ada, wait! And she never waits. But yeah, like, that's kind of issue. I didn't think that was an issue. I was like, you know what? He's different from Game Leon. But I would be interested in seeing this version of Leon do Resident Evil 4. Of course, that's not going to happen because the movie flopped. Which is a bummer, because I don't know. I would have liked to see what they were cooking. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like one of the big weaknesses of the movie is that they were kind of thinking ahead too much, thinking ahead to it being a franchise, and kind of, you know, compromised a few things in the one movie. But yeah, that's kind of my review on 2 of the Resident Evil movies. They were okay. They were fun. They weren't great movies. One is a silly, cheesy early 2000s movie, and the other is just Resident Evil fan service that unfortunately kind of seems to have not been popular with the fans either, so that's a shame. But I'm a fan, and it was popular with me. And I'm the only person who matters, because my opinions are always right. Oh, the other thing about Resident Evil movie is that Ada shows up in the post-credits scene and is weirdly played by the same character who plays her in Resident Evil 4 remake. Was it, I think, Lily Gao? That was interesting. Which also, I learned that when she shows up in the Paul Anderson movies later on, she is played by like an actress, but they dub over her voice with the voice actress who voiced her in Resident Evil 4 and the games. So that's interesting that Ada in like both versions was played by the same actress in the games and the movies, which didn't happen with any of the other characters. we're gonna get to we might get 250,000. Yep, I think we're gonna hit 150,000. I had a good pace going. Oh. Need 34 more. I don't know if there are 34 left on here. Okay, 19 more. I think there's 19 on here. Because I think that was it. Come on, rotate. Yep, okay. There we go. Got 250,000. Alright, I'm gonna call that for today. We are 2/3 of the way done with all of the buttons in this build. So yeah.